Everybody in Stevenson and Saltcoats used to call the factory at Ardeer the Dynamite. I don't know what they call it now, hardly exists anymore. Passing by in the train and looking out the window, the big chimneys are gone, the cooling towers and the cordite huts. All away. My name's Helen Ritchie. It's 1940, I'm 19 and travelling into my job in Paisley as a letterpress feeder every day by train from Beef. Life's soon to change because everybody's getting called up to help the war effort. My sister May, you ken her May, right? Well, May gets herself a job at Ardeer and can't stop talking about it. She's going on and on about how great it is and how she's in with the bosses. And she says she can get me a job too. Mammy's all for it. The money's great and we'll be company for each other on the train. So May's working at the centrifugals. That's what we call the centrifuges. And she's having a total ball. Hard work though it is. Me, I find myself in the cordite huts at New Hill, and right from the start, I don't like it. We're 12 girls to a hut, and it's our job to blend the 6 of cordite, walking round and round the huge blenders, lifting a few sticks from each and depositing them in the big blender at the end. The fumes of the cordite when the doors of the hut are closed are really strong. And it's worse in the night shift when the big black shutters are put up in the windows. There's 3 shifts in the cordite, 7 to 3, 3 to 11 and night shift. There's lots of hazards in the night shift, real and imagined. The toilets are quite a long way from the hut. Visiting them in the middle of the night in total darkness isn't a very pleasant experience, especially when you're stumbling over tufty grass growing out the top of sand dunes. These toilets are a bit primitive. Basically, just a pail inside a wee hut. A lassie was attacked by a weasel in one of these forays. It clung on to her bare bottom with its wee sharp teeth until they drew blood. After this, I'm always very chary of using the privy in the dark, just in case a wee weasel's lying in wait to spring up at a bear behind. We're a mixed bunch in our cordite hut, a dozen women from all different parts of the country. But war's a great leveller, and we all get on fine. One of the lassies who works beside me's Joan Wilson. I'm changing her name in case her family are watching this. Joan's from Lochwinnoch, and my mammy's her mammy's third cousin or second cousin, something like that. Anyway, we all know Joan, Saint Joan, our May likes to call her. Well, you ken our May. St John's that demure and modest in the village. Mammy's always going to me and our May. Can you two not be ladylike and proper like Joan Wilson? Well, I get to see a whole different side to St John when I start work at Ardeer. The men whose job it is to be runners, pushing the bogies outside loaded with cordite, they sometimes come into our hut on the night shift when the runs are finished for an hour or so's kip up the far end of the hut on the work bags. St John takes great delight when the men are fast asleep to slip up there and open their trouser buttons, thereby exposing their privates to all and sundry. Boy, are the men mortified when they wake up. She's got a very low boredom threshold, as they say nowadays, does St John. And on the back shift, she always gets fed up, and one night she says, "Och, I'm away to get a pass out to go to the wreck." This is the dancing. It's almost impossible to get a pass out. Once you're in, you're in. And if you want one, you have to pay a visit to wee Cocky Robertson, the chemist, in his office along the line. He's the head lad, and so important, you nearly have to touch your forelock when you meet him. St John's got a snowball's chance in hell of getting her pass out, and we tell her as much, but Over her shoulder, on her way out, she calls, "Well, just wait and see." And sure enough, maybe half an hour later, she's back, laughing and triumphant, waving the precious pass out. And with everybody asking what she had to do in the office to get it, we all know but. And many, many dirty suggestions follow St Joan down the line to the railway station. And a good night at the wreck. Woohoo! One of the girls we travel down with on the train from Beath works by herself in a big building at the end of the bogie line. Violet's dead streetwise. She's originally from Glasgow. Violet really enjoys her job and gets a name for herself for entertaining the young soldiers camped up in the hill, keeping lookout for enemy planes. It's a well-known fact that if you're on the wee stretch of line going up to the stores for requisitions, you have to call out her name in good time, just in case she's given TLC to one of the lads. In time, Violet buys herself a fur coat in Glasgow and wears it to work with pride. We all admire it, of course, but behind her back, everyone says it's rabbit's fur. We've got a foreman in here, Robert Boyd, better known as Bertie Badfish, because before the war he pushed a wheelbarrow selling haddock and skate round the streets of Irvine. Rumour has it he jumped into Ardeer to avoid joining up because it's a reserved occupation. You should see him strutting around in his peak cap and overalls with great authority. I doubt they'd take him anyway in the army. He's a white-faced, shilpit-looking character. And guess who he fancies? Keeps inviting me out for a night at the pictures. I'm not interested, obviously. At the beginning of the shift, the foreman visits each hut and decides where the labour's to go. If he's short on bogey runners, for instance, he'll just pick out the required number and tell you to go and get equipped with the proper clothing for the job. Coarse navy blue fire-resistant trousers that rub your legs raw and big Charlie Chaplin boots. This one night I have the pleasure of being picked, me and Liz. She's from Kilmarnock. It's on the night shift, so really it's a mixed blessing, as I don't fancy the idea of an air raid when you're out pushing your bogey. We're to go to another part of the plant, maybe 3 miles away. So here's me and Liz pushing our bogey away along to the building where the men polish the bullets with the black powder. After we disgorge our load, we're just about to leave when one of the men asks if we want a wee packet to take home to our mammies to polish the grate with. Apparently, if you mix this black powder with methylated spirits, it brings up the iron just grand. It's free, eh? So we take the black powder, wrapped up inside some wax paper, and I'm happy that I'm giving my mammy something she can't get in the shops. End of our shift comes. It's winter, right? The snow's lying thick on the ground, and big fairy me is starting to get a bit worried about smuggling this stuff out of the factory. See, when we're all going home, there's searchers waiting at the gates to check you over, and these ladies standing in their little boxes can pick you out at random for what they call a double search. I've hidden my packet of black powder down my bra, but as I get near to the grates, I'm quaking in my boots, so I pull out the packet to throw it away into the snow, and my hands are shaking that much I manage to rip the wretched thing, and it spills all down my stomach. What a mess. And the searcher never even looks at me. My mammy's furious. My underwear's ruined because the black powder won't wash out. Liz tells me a couple of days later, it wasn't even any use for polishing grates anyway. Mostly, but when we're sent elsewhere to fill in the places of those who haven't turned up for work, it's to the press houses, about a mile away from Newhill and nearer to Ardeer. I get picked for this just the once, and every day I pray I don't get picked again. I'd even go out with Bertie Badfish just to avoid that. See if the fumes are bad in the blending huts? They're 100 times worse in the press houses. The cordites carried on bogies and sacks, right? Warm and reeking. And in the press houses, we have to take it out and put it in a machine which turns the dough-like mixture into the cords, which eventually go to our huts once they've been dried out in trays. Some lassies get addicted to the smell, and no one's kept in the press houses on a permanent basis. One lassie I know to say hello to, Mary, gets overlooked. These fumes are like a drug to Mary, and she lives for the moment the men bring in the bags full of warm, steaming cordite. I see it myself in the one night I'm there. The way she runs forward, opens the neck of the sack, and inhales deeply. This goes on for several weeks, and finally comes to an end one night when the press house lassies are all drinking their tea in the mess room. Mary undresses herself until she's stark naked. Naked as the day she was born. Then gets up on the table and starts to dance, drunk in the fumes. The place is in an uproar. She's swiftly removed in an ambulance up to the Red Cross, just at the gate. I hear later she recovers all right, if a bit mortified at her own behaviour. In fact, after a lengthy period in the sick, Mary comes back to her work, but she's given an outside job. It was the nitroglycerin and the cordite got her high. I leave the factory in the summer of 1942 to get married and live in Paisley. And the day I finish, I'm quite sad because I'm leaving behind all these men and women who've become close friends. They present me with a magnificent silver water jug, teapot, sugar and cream. I still don't know where they managed to get something so exquisite in wartime. Speeches are made in the mess room about how we've all had our ups and downs. But one thing, I finished up without ever having been delegated to the honey bogey. It's a standing joke in the place that if you get into any kind of trouble, you're demoted to the honey bogey. An explanation is needed here. The girls on the honey bogey, dressed in special clothes, go around emptying the pails in the dry toilets and taking away the contents. Well, somebody's got to do it, eh? And if I'd been caught that night with a black powder down my bra, it might very well have been me.